In this room, they have posters of about 12 women who are distinguished women. Each of them did something special, and they want young people to come into this room and learn from these women and have some idea that women can change the world. And here is a poster of my mother. She's called Tova Rubin. That's her maiden name. And Tova Kuczynski is after she got married. But her name was Gittel Ruchel Rubin. But as she joined the Zionist movement, she changed her name to Tova, to Hebrew. And at home, my mother always spoke Hebrew, never Yiddish and never Polish. She was born in Poland, in Rembetov, which is a small town, a small shtetl near Warsaw. Today it is part of Warsaw, but at the time it was a small shtetl near Warsaw. In the year 1933, she joined the Zionist movement of the Mizrahi, but she was in the women's section, and the women's section was called Bruria. And she had the idea that she wanted to go to Israel. She wanted to get a certificate and come and live in Israel. But they told her that if she wants to get a certificate, she has to go to the rural areas of Poland, get training for a few years, and after proving that she can do agricultural work, she might get a certificate. Now, she knew she couldn't go and leave home because her father was ultra-Orthodox, and he wouldn't let his daughter live somewhere with boys, young boys. So they told her there is another way. You can marry someone. It doesn't have to be real marriage. It can be fiction. You can pretend to marry someone, but you will get a legal certificate that you are married, and on his certificate, you will get to Israel. She said, no, I want certificates for religious women so that they can prove that they have the right to immigrate to Israel and not as companions of men. And also, she knew that when she comes to Israel, she will have to divorce anyway, and she did not want to be a divorcee. So they told her, you can't get a certificate and you won't get to Israel. She said, no, I have a better idea. We can establish a kibbutz of women, a cooperative of women. We shall live like the kibbutz in Israel. And she rented a house in this place, in Rembetov, in Poland. And she went to live in this house with her friends. No men were allowed to go into this kibbutz because it was only for women. And in the years Tafresh Tzadik Gimel, Tafresh Tzadik Daled, it means 1933 and 1934, they built a kibbutz which was called La Matara, to the target, to the objective. And what was their objective? What was the end? To reach Israel. And it was in the organization Bruria in Rembetov. Every day they had a diary and they wrote what was going on in the kibbutz. They were telling every day how they lived their lives. And they had a timetable. And in this timetable, I want to show you and tell you how they made it. Yes. On Sunday, in the morning first, they were working. Who were the girls in this kibbutz? The girls were girls who knew sewing, and they made a living from sewing dresses to the wives of the officers who were in the military base that was located in this same village. My mother couldn't sew even a button. She didn't know how to hold a needle. But what she knew how to run a business, because before she went into this kibbutz, she worked in a bank, and she knew very well how to calculate and how to do accounting. So there were 8 girls in the kibbutz. She was the leader of the kibbutz, and until 8 o'clock in the evening, they used to work. At 8:30, they would study, sometimes presse. The next lesson was religiöse Philosophie. It means Jewish philosophy. And then Hebrew, because if you want to go to Israel, you need to know Hebrew. And then Agadah, it means the traditional legends of the Jewish tradition. They would study the Bible, and they will have all kinds of discussions about going to Israel and Zionism. The kibbutz was run for a year and a half, and she couldn't get certificates to come to Israel. They wouldn't give her certificates. She will find her way. And what was the idea? She had how do you call it when you bring the press together? What's the word? Conference. A press conference. A press conference. She will have a press conference in the kibbutz. She brought all the Jewish journalists from Warsaw to this small shtetl, and also the representatives of the Zionist office in Warsaw. And what else? She had only 8 girls. She said 8 girls are not enough. So she brought another 9 girls from Warsaw to join them. And they were all dressed. If you look here, you can see the uniform that they had. They had a uniform in this kibbutz. So they made the same uniform for the other girls as well. And there were 17 girls waiting for the press conference. And she prepared them for the press conference. She told them, if they ask you a question, you should say, we leave a home to get a home in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel. Fine. The press conference took place, and they were all so impressed by these young girls that she got 17 certificates. And after a short time, they left the place, but they had a problem. One of them was under the age of 18, and she was an orphan. Her father died, and she needed the parents to sign for her, because if you are under 18, you need your parents to confirm that you can leave the country. Now, the father was dead. They had to leave the place on Sunday, and they were told on Friday that they need this confirmation. My mother said, don't worry. She walked all the way to Warsaw. She went to the office, she got the right documents, and since it was Shabbat, it was Saturday, she walked back. And this girl was rescued, was saved. She joined them to the boat. They went to the railway station in Rembertov, took a train to Constanza, to Romania, and there they boarded a ship, and they went to Israel. And all the way to Israel, they were dancing on the deck and singing. And when they boarded the ship, there was a Zionist.
What year was this?
It was in March 1934. On March 1934, they boarded the ship. And on the same day, Sokolov also boarded the ship. So there was an orchestra. And they played the Hatikva. And the girls were sure that they are playing the Hatikva for them. Because they were pioneers. They were chalutzot. They came to Israel. They came to the port of Jaffa, to Jaffa port. And there was no way that the ship could reach the shore. So they were thrown from the deck into the boats by Arab sailors, and then they reached Tel Aviv, and no one was waiting for them. They were shocked. They thought they were the most famous pioneers coming to Israel. So they had to take their suitcases and walk all the way to Tel Aviv. It was 4 days before Pesach. When they had to celebrate the Seder, the first holiday in Israel without their families, the girls started crying. But my mother told them, "You have to be happy that you are here in Israel, and we shall celebrate it happily." Then they established a kibbutz in Tel Aviv, and for 2 years they lived as a cooperative in Tel Aviv. During these 2 years, she thought, how can we bring our families to Israel? And she had an idea. If we prove to the British that we can support ourselves and our families, they will let us send certificates to our families. So she rented a small shop, and she put a big sign on this shop, that this is a shop of gallantry, of dresses, by the cooperative of the Jewish women of the Mizrahi. And she got certificates for their families. And all the families of the girls arrived in Israel, except for her own family, because her father was a rich man, and he had a lot of business in Poland, and it was hard for him to liquidate his business. So in the year 1937, she went back to Poland to bring them. And he told her, "Don't worry, my daughter, we'll come." So she took her brother with her, and she went back to Israel, and they stayed behind. And unfortunately, the whole family was murdered by the Nazis in 1939.
Were they sent?
They were sent to Treblinka, so it was in 1942. That's the truth. I was born in 1946, and my mother had a long list of names to give me, but she couldn't believe that they were all murdered. And she said, "I'll call the newborn Nili. Netzach Yisrael lo yeshaker." God, the eternal God, will never lie to his people. He will keep his promise. And all my life, I feel that I'm fulfilling the promise given to our people to grow new families in the land of Israel, and thanking God that we have the privilege to see new generations living in our country. That's the story. It's a beautiful story, isn't it? Here you see them in the kibbutz, sitting and sewing, and that's in Tel Aviv. That's the postcard they sent their parents to show that they arrived in Israel.
And Avisha, this is her...
That's her passport.
Very special lady, your mother.
Yes. With a sewing machine.
And there's a sewing machine.
So that's the story. That's the diary of the kibbutz. And here you can see that every day, I'll just show you, I need to open it carefully. Every day they were writing what was going on in the kibbutz and how they lived their lives in the kibbutz. It's all written in Yiddish because in those days they knew very little Hebrew. They were still studying Hebrew. But later, in our home, only Hebrew was heard, never Yiddish and never Polish, because my parents wanted us to be Israelis.
And this is your mom's handwriting?
No. It was written by the girls of the kibbutz. Each time by somebody else.
By somebody else.
Yes. That's the diary. And there is a book which was published by the Bar Ilan University. And it is called Ben Masoret LeChidush, Between Tradition and Novelty. And there is here one article that tells about my mother, and it is called When Fantasy is Fulfilled, because her fantasy was fulfilled, and this was also the title of the article after the press conference. Because after the press conference, there were articles in the Jewish press in Warsaw, and one of the journalists said, this fantasy is going to be fulfilled. The fantasy of this girl is going to be fulfilled. And so the name of the article is כשהפנטזיה מתגשמת, when fantasy is fulfilled. It's a chapter in the history of the religious pioneer in Poland between the two world wars. And she is an example of a religious Zionist pioneer who had the initiative and the right idea how to bring young religious Zionist girls to Israel.
I think it's only fitting that it was published in Bar Ilan,
Yes.
and Zorch Verhaftig was the founder of Bar Ilan.
Yes, it's true. Well, so that's it.
Beautiful.
Very, very special. What a special lady.
So we did it.
Story.
Nili, thank you so much.
And thank you for coming and doing this video in honor of my mother.
It's a very special woman, a Eshet Chayil, a real Eshet Chayil.
Right. Thank you very much for
We'll
doing it.
take of each individual.